To introduce Dr. Katie Heinemann. In her capacity as the Vice President of Science and Conservation of the Center for Plant Conservation, she is dedicated to improving access to biological data for conservation research and promoting synthetic research among botanical institutions. Originally from Northeast Nebraska, Dr. Heinemann began her work with CPC 6 years ago, following the completion of her dissertation work studying plant ecology of tropical trees at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute in Panama. Her current research applies to data science, to plant collection records, to develop smarter strategies for collections prioritization, and to uncover patterns in rare plant storage behavior in seed banks. She's the project manager of CPC Rare Plant Academy, an online platform that integrates CPC's best practice guidelines with videos and online discourse. She also develops and maintains the web databases for the CPC National Collection and the California Plant Rescue Seed Collections Initiative. Without further ado, I am pleased to welcome Dr. Katie Heinemann.
Thanks so much. I am unmuted now, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for having me today, everyone. Like Maggie mentioned, I'm here representing the Center for Plant Conservation, and I will try not to say CPC, but our acronym is CPC in case I slip up. And we're really fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with an amazing collaborative of botanical institutions basically within our network called California Plant Rescue. And so today I'm going to talk about the partnerships that have formed in this group and how this group has really made amazing progress seed banking the rarest plants in California and been able to take advantage of a really amazing opportunity that I'll detail more later. And so I'm sure this is preaching to the choir a little bit, but why do we care about seed banking rare plants? What's so amazing about seed banking? And so the primary focus of a lot of CPC's seed banking programs is truly extinction prevention. So seeds are amazing, as we can all attest.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're not in presenting view.
Oh, sorry. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. Yes. I will just make sure. Does that advance correctly for you guys?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
It's working.
Yeah. And so an amazing thing about seeds is that they can be stored in their dormant phase in freezers, and that is an incredibly cost-effective and space-efficient way to save biodiversity. Relatively little training is required to successfully do seed banking compared to, say, cryopreserving embryos or cell lines, as we do for many vertebrate species. And also, it's very broadly appropriate taxonomically. About 75 to 80% of species, and perhaps even more in drier places like California, can be stored in this way. And so the seed collections in the Center for Plant Conservation Network and in the California Plant Rescue Network are really a first line of defense against rare plant extinction. And in addition, rare plants are an important part of ecosystem restoration and rehabilitation. And as many of you are very involved in the National Seed Strategy, what our network is doing is very similar to what you have all done with this, with the Seeds of Success and the National Seed Strategy. We are trying to work together across the country to collect seeds most in need so that we have them for later restoration. And so rare plants are a critical part of these resilient ecosystems. They have outsized influence on pollinator networks, and they provide key functional complementarity in many ecosystems. And so, as Peggy said in our national meeting this year and has written in many places, plants are a critical part of America's green infrastructure. And so today I'm going to try to highlight ways that the work that our California Plant Rescue Network is aligning with different goals in the National Seed Strategy. But of course, much of today's talk focuses on California specifically, and there are many characteristics of California that necessitates both ecosystem prevention or extinction prevention and ecosystem restoration. So as I'm sure you've seen on the news and have experienced personally in many cases, wildfires have burned 4.3 million acres of California in just 2020 alone, and that's 4% of the state. We have other threats to rare plants, development, sea level rise, drought, etc., and they all threaten rare plants. And so there's a lot of urgency to collect the rare plants in the state of California before it's too late, and also to follow some of these events to get plants that may follow fire or other extreme disturbance events. And so if seed banking is so great and so efficient, why are not all of the rare plants already in seed collections? And so this is because institutions are variable in their priorities and their collections policies. There's variability in funding for this activity, and there's geographic and permit accessibility restrictions. And so one entity is really unlikely to have the expertise and access and continuity to be able to collect all of these species. So much like is called for in the National Seed Strategy, we need a long-term multi-institutional commitment to conserve this vast flora. And so that is why California Plant Rescue was established in 2014. Again, this is a group of 10 botanical institutions in the state of California who have been working together to conserve the botanical diversity of the Golden State. And I'll plug this website a few times. If you want to go to caplantrescue.org, you can learn even more about this organization and our members. And as you can see, this group encompasses nonprofits like California Native Plant Society, Theodore Payne, many of the main botanic gardens in the state, many of the university botanic gardens in the state. And so today I'm going to talk about what has made this group a really successful collaborative that's been able to achieve a great deal towards their goal of conserving botanical diversity. And so when this group was founded in 2014, it was spearheaded by a group at California Botanic Garden, previously known as Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden. And so 3 members there that I picture here on the left were seminal in creating the first kind of accessions database for California Plant Rescue. And so this group, not all of them currently work at California Botanic Garden, but Naomi Fraga is still the director of research there. Nick Jensen now works at California Native Plant Society, and Evan Myers, the director of Theodore Payne Foundation. And so they looked in 2014 at the status of rare plants and seed collection in California, and they found that overall of the 1B taxa in California, now 1B is the most rare ranking as ranked by the California Native Plant Society, they found that only 30% of those rare plants were in collection. However, there are some groups that are much more represented. And I wanted to point out that perhaps the best represented group in seed collection at that time was our federally listed plants. And that is one aspect of our success in seed banking in California that I just wanted to really call out specifically is that federal partners, like the people on this call, have really facilitated the capacity long-term for seed banking in California through Section 6 funding, by the Seeds of Success program building capacity and seed funding, and the BLM providing access, by our USDA partners providing capacity for backup storage and advice, and then all the funding and land access provided by other public land partners from the Forest Service, Park Service, and DoD. And so another reason, having the view from Center for Plant Conservation of seeing initiatives in other states, California is extremely fortunate that we have so much public land and so many willing partners in this capacity. And so mentioning all of these federal partners and all of these botanical nonprofit partners, and a really important part for CaPR in our success has been a really organized form of coordination and governance. And so CaPR, and again, California Plant Rescue has an acronym too that I just caught myself. It's CaPR, and which is cute because it's a plant also. And we have basically been operating under a memorandum of understanding since 2015. And so it's very consensus rich. It's a supermajority vote for all funding allocation decisions and admission of new partners. And there's a required annual meeting for us to touch base, although we typically touch base more frequently than that. And even more so than the governance structure is the fact that we have a person who's been actively coordinating this herd of cats. Her name is Krista Horn, and she's the conservation program manager at San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. And so she dedicates about 20% of her time to coordinating this group, which has been extremely important in moving the different initiatives forward. She plans meetings, leads task force, meets with agency partners and stakeholders, manages our website, and creates promotional materials. And then since this is all kind of a group of nonprofits and not a nonprofit itself, the Center for Plant Conservation acts as the fiscal sponsor and executes contracts for the group. And so, yes, we just really thank Krista for all that she's done to kind of move this forward and manage the different projects. And then another thing that really makes a network a unit is, in my opinion, having data sharing and data access. And so one other important thing that we've worked on since the founding of CaPR in 2014 is a set of database tools for us to plan seed collections in California. So we have a web-based seed accession database that's accessible to all members that has a very detailed set of fields kind of indicating the exact location of these plants, the maternal lines, the number of seeds, the date of collection, the collectors. And so this is only available to partners, but there's also a public-facing version that says basically the species and where they're located at different seed banks. And we also have a set of spatial tools that have mapped all of the California rare plants where they've been collected. And we match these against the natural heritage records in order to prioritize what populations to collect next. And then finally, we have a prioritization tool that allows our collectors to search for uncollected occurrences near them. So they're able to prioritize their collections by phylogeny, by land ownership, and by other criterion. And so what's really exciting is that we're hoping to launch a kind of more integrated module of all of these web tools sometime this year that we hope will allow people to query both the database and the map at the same time, as well as use our prioritization tool. And this is not only potentially for our partners, but we are considering how we can give access to this resource to specific members at different partners, potentially agencies, so that they can see the collections that I've made on their lands and that sort of thing. And so then finally, another aspect of CaPR that's made it successful and able to take advantage of different seed collecting opportunities is communication. We have an annual meeting, and this year we're finally meeting in person again at the CMPS conference in San Jose. We have a group tool where we communicate our seed targeting priorities, including where we're going to collect and who's going to collect. And we create an annual public-facing report and maintain a public-facing website to communicate and reach out to the public. And so all of these things have really led up to CaPR's ability to take advantage of a super exciting opportunity, which is the California Biodiversity Initiative funding for biodiversity protection. And so just a small kind of schoolhouse rock about this initiative is that in 2017, former Governor Jerry Brown convened a group of biodiversity experts, and it was a large group, but luckily some of those experts included some of our current CaPR seed collectors listed here. And so just noting it's good to be at the table, and they outlined in their charter the goal of seed banking all of the rare species in California. And then we are very thankful that California Native Plant Society was able to lobby and work with CDFA to advocate for this network to be more or less the state seed bank of California rather than, say, creating a central seed bank. And then this legislation was introduced by Assemblyperson Ash Carrera and signed by Gavin Newsom. And what we ended up with was $3 million for seed banking all of the rare plants in California that was signed into law in 2019. And so the way this funding breaks down is there's $3 million in this legislation and also an additional $600,000 from a license plate fund. And about $2.5 million of that goes to seed collections directly. We're funding seed collections at $2,500 a collection. And we also have $1 million for infrastructure and databasing. And so this provides enough support for 1,000 new rare plant seed collections, which is just a massive boon for our network and our program. And so, and feel free to interrupt me. I hear little pings, but I don't have my chat up in case you need to ask me questions during the presentation. But also, just to give you an overview of how we're prioritizing what species to collect, the legislation basically laid out that we could collect one collection per uncollected CNPS ranked 1B species in the in our database. So 1B again is the most rare species in California of the CNPS ranking system. And how we've decided to allocate this money is basically in two parts. We give collectors half of the funding after the collections data is received and half after processing has been completed for the seed collections in order to kind of help with the cash flow during this kind of time-consuming process of processing seeds. And then importantly, all of these collections are made according to an agreed upon protocol that's based on largely on the Center for Plant Conservation guidelines. It emphasizes maternal line seed collecting for these rare plants, meaning that each individual plant that's collected is stored separately. It emphasizes voucher collection. So when seeds are collected or variant vouchers are taken so that the taxonomy of the seed collection can be later verified. And then finally, safety duplication across so that obviously if a fire came through, you know, the safari park, which it has before, all of our seed collections at the zoo are not lost. And so again, we thank our partners at the USDA for serving as a backup storage facility for most of these seeds in the CaPR network. And so from the early results of this funding, we've really been able to take advantage and hit the ground running. So here I'm showing a graph of the cumulative number of 1B species. So again, the rarest plant species in California in seed collection. So as you can see over the early aughts and teens, the number of seeds added to our collection, the number of species added to our collection per year was fairly small, about 9 per year. Then after CaPR was founded in around 2014, our capacity for adding new biodiversity to the collection increased. We were collecting around 35 new species per year, thanks in part to a grant from the Millennium Seed Bank Partnership at Royal Botanic Gardens. And then after the state funding came in, we were able to greatly increase our capacity to 125 new species per year. And then in the final 3 years of the grant, we are basically on pace to get to our goal of securing all of the plant species by collecting at a rate of 94 new species per year. So again, we think that the processes and the partnerships and the governance structure we had in place really allowed us to take advantage of this new funding opportunity. And just in case we need to kind of validate how well we're doing against a priori targets. The Center for the Convention on Biological Diversity set out a goal of conserving 75% of rare species ex-situ by 2020, and we almost met it, but just 1 year late in 2021, we now have all of 75% of the rare species in California conserved in seed collections, almost exactly. And so for this part of the talk, I'm going to talk about our success of this initiative and its importance in closing some of the gaps that we have in our collection. And these are some of the early results from a gap analysis manuscript in progress. So for instance, the year before the California Biodiversity funding, we were able to make some significant progress on seed collections, but mostly in the strong population centers of the state where most of our botanic gardens are located. Many of our botanic gardens, California Botanic Garden, Santa Barbara Botanic Garden, are in the southern part of the state, as this graph indicates. And then the year after funding, this concentrated funding was allowed for more expeditions and more capacity and more collecting by different partners in the northern part of the state, which is really important, as you can imagine, to not only the number of species in collection, but the functional groups of species in collection. Also, this is a fairly dense table, but Another way that we've improved is taxonomically in terms of being less biased in what we're collecting. So this table shows basically the top 5 most improved species in terms of our collections capacity over the past 5 years, and the bottom 5 species in terms of the bottom 5 families in terms of what families have improved the least. And as you can see, the top 2 families that have nearly doubled in the number of seeds species collected after funding include the Oroboncaceae, which is the broom rape family, which is just a yuck name, and also kind of a not super beautiful hemiparasitic genus. So, and then also the mustards, as you can imagine, maybe were perhaps somewhat discriminated against in botanical collections and have nearly doubled since we've had collection funding. Some of the other families that have not increased as much in the number of species were already fairly well collected, things like mallows and the Ericaceae, which has the beautiful manzanitas and whatnot, and then other well-studied genera like Clarkia and Dudleya. And so in this way, we've been able to close this kind of discrepancy where we've been able to focus on the families that need collecting. And kind of along this line on why some species may be collected and not others, I've been working with a undergraduate, Tina Stanley, on her senior thesis, and she was asking the question of how plant apparency and plant attractiveness affects the probability that a rare species will be in collection. And so 2 things that she looked at in the Asteraceae are how stem length and floral diameter affects if a rare plant species is collected. And so she found that stem length, for example, plants with larger stems, which are presumably more apparent, are more likely to have been collected both before the founding of CaPR and after the founding of CaPR compared to the species that remain to be collected. So for the rest of the species we collect, I guess we're going to need to get a little bit closer to the ground. And also she looked at how attractiveness might affect the probability of collection. So she found that before the founding of CaPR, California Plant Rescue again, that the average aster that was collected had a much larger floral diameter than after we were intentionally trying to collect all the biodiversity in the state. So just an important step back on how we're all people, and it affects how we value and collect biodiversity. And importantly, this funding source has also really increased the genetic resources of the collection and the quality of seed collections. So here I'm really focusing on the number of maternal lines, or the number of individual plants secured in collection. So prior to CaPR, we had the founding of CaPR, we had around 40,000 individual rare plant individuals in seed collection in California. And this is just the plants ranked as 1B. And then after CaPR and since the funding, we've nearly doubled the number of actual plants we have as backup genetic resources to potentially use in restoration projects later. And also when we look at the types of collections that we've been able to fund through the California Biodiversity Initiative, we see that their average number of maternal lines that they've been able to collect is much greater than the previous seed collections that were often collected opportunistically. So having this funding, it's not only quantity of seed collections and quantity of species, it's quality of the genetic resources in these collections. And so again, just big picture, the benefits of this program have been that we've secured 442 rare plant populations and seed collections. We've also been able to safeguard our existing collections through investment in fireproofing big seed collections like at California Botanic Garden, adding backup power to many of our institutions like UC Berkeley, and getting germination chambers for many of our seed banks, so that they can not only safeguard species in frozen storage, but also check on these seeds to make sure they're alive later. Also, this funding has given money to the California Native Plant Society to do their really important rare plant assessment work. I keep mentioning the term 1B That's their rank for the rarest plant species in California. And so they're going through their list and adding species that have been nominated. And they've also made significant improvements to their online rare plant inventory, which is an amazing public resource that you should all visit. And also, as I mentioned before, we've been working on a long-term database solution for the CaPR information, and also working with the Natural Heritage Database and with CMPS, and making sure the collections information is represented in multiple places. And so we think that the model that we've established in California could work for other critical centers of biological diversity. And so one place that Center for Plant Conservation is currently working with is Florida. We're working in Florida to create kind of Florida plant rescue. So we think this is a great location to perhaps replicate the success of this program, given the urgent threats in Florida, and also the fact that it has a large community of botanical experts in the area able to potentially do this seed banking. And so we did a pilot project in Florida in the year 2021. We had 3 institutions collect 8 previously uncollected species. And what's amazing is the diversity that they collected: legumes, asters, sedges, orchids, and everything else. And so then we were able to acquire funding from a private foundation, the Band Foundation, for 2022. We'll fund 18 seed collections and 2 exceptional species projects to 5 institutions. And we're also hoping to, we have invited on Hannah Rosner-Katz of Florida Natural Areas Inventory to coordinate this project, and hopefully replicate the success that we've had with CaPR with strong coordination. So thanks to Hannah for that. And so another next step that we're hoping to lead the way in terms of our capacity to store rare plants long-term is researching seed longevity and storage. So the Center for Plant Conservation has a grant with the Institute for Museum and Library Services to recollect seed collections that have been stored in orthodox storage for 15 years or more. And so our goal is to evaluate how long these species are living in storage through both germination trials and using a new metric of seed aging called RNA integrity. So essentially what we're doing is we're trying to evaluate if there's a relatively low destructive means of assessing seed aging without having to depend on our ability to immediately germinate the seeds, because dormancy and pre-treatments can really confuse germination results. And so this is a project that is ongoing with the National Laboratory for Genetic Resource Preservation in the lab of Chris Walters in Fort Collins. And I believe there's a parallel study going on with the Seeds of Success program. And so hopefully together we can get a lot more insight about how best to measure seed longevity in these important seed collections. And then also, not all seeds, as I mentioned, can be stored through orthodox frozen storage. So the California Plant Rescue Network has also been on a limited basis funding exceptional species proposals. So 2 examples of this exceptional species work includes 2 very different situations. So we have Quercus sedgecensis, which is a species that, like all oaks, has recalcitrant seeds that can't be stored in frozen storage. And so San Diego Botanic Garden is leading the way by propagating these species from seed and cuttings and distributing these long-lived oak species to other gardens to potentially conserve in a meta-collection framework. And then there's another species, an aster Ambrosia pumila, which no longer basically creates viable seed in the wild. It's a rhizotomous species, and so it basically is very difficult to seed bank because it only produces inviable seed in certain situations. So San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance is planning to experiment with how best to store lines of this species, either as a nursery collection or as a display collection on its grounds. So those are examples of ways we're trying to find ways to store exceptional species. And then in terms of for CaPR, Our post funding scenario for how we want to increase seed collections after we've collected one of every species is we would like to start doing strategic population additions for our already banked species. And so one goal that we have is to collect all the rare plants in every ecoregion where they occur. And so an example of this might be Atriplex pacifica. It occurs along the Southern California coast and on many of the offshore islands. And so, for instance, right now we have one coastal population in seed collection, but we also would really love to collect this same species on Catalina Island. So because presumably that would be uncollected genetic diversity. And then another goal we would have is to prioritize collecting the largest population of all of the rarest species, just so that we can maximize the species-wide genetics diversity conserved. And then another outcome that we would really like to get better at as a network is learning more about the propagation of many of the rare plants we collected for this project, bulking seed to create the quantity needed for restoration, and especially learning how to disseminate kind of this idiosyncratic information about rare plant propagation and curation. And so an example of this is some work that Billy Sale at California Botanic Garden did on Atriplex species. So this is a video that she presented at the Center for Plant Conservation National Meeting. And so a lot of the work she did included painstaking looks at the pre-treatments and the germination trials, testing different soil mix, taking data on how they responded and how many seeds were created in each soil mix. And so we're looking for ways as a network to store this information, share this information, and the Forest Service database, the for restoration is one avenue, and we're open to suggestions for other means. And then finally, a way that we're hoping to help educate stakeholders about the use of rare plant seeds is in part through a new online course that's forthcoming. The CPC of Plant Conservation online course is funded in large part by the Bureau of Land Management, and it will include modules about seed banking, reintroduction, applied conservation genetics, rare plant monitoring, and many of our CaPR seed collectors are contributing to this resource that we hope will be used by partners who manage lands that use rare plant seed. We also operate a community forum where you can potentially ask experts about different plant conservation topics. And like I just shared with Billy's video, we have a large video library that catalogs different rare plant conservation actions and propagation strategies. So thank you to our CaPR network. And again, feel free to visit CaPlantrescue.org to learn more. And thank you for having me today.
Oh gosh, that was excellent. Let's give Katie a round of applause. You can either do it virtually or if you want to turn your camera on. That was really, really great. Thank you so much. I see lots of applause, lots of hands clapping. Thank you for your time in putting that together. So we do have plenty of time for question and answer. And so I will scour the chat and participants for raised hands. You can also feel free to just turn your camera on if you want to ask a question. And again, we do ask that you introduce yourselves if you're going to ask a question, just so we can start to get to know each other. And I think I'll kick it off. One, I thank you for the information about that online course. And thank you to BLM for providing funding for that. I think that's going to be really great and incredibly valuable. With the research being done on the seed longevity and looking at the regeneration of some of the successions that are 15 years and older, when do you think that research will be complete and shared?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am going to be regrouping with Chris Walters at our national meeting. So the Center for Plant Conservation national meeting this year is in Denver Botanic Gardens, and we're actually operating a field trip to the national lab in Fort Collins the day before the meeting. So if any of you guys are in the Denver area and interested, you're very welcome to attend our meeting or our field trip. And so we'll be looking at the preliminary results kind of this spring, but the grant is 3 years. So definitely by the end of, I guess, 2024, we'll be sharing those results.
Okay, that's great. I know that the National Park Service, does have some sessions that are in that aging group. So that'll be great for us to learn more about. And they're at the lab here in Fort Collins. So let's see, Peggy, I see you've got your hand up. If you're able to turn your camera on and ask your question, that would be great.
Yeah, great talk. I'm so glad to hear about the updates, Katie. One thing that I am going to try and get to your meeting. Anna Lindquist and my group are going to try and get there. I'm not even sure right now what the Department of Interior's travel policy is, but we're going to try to get there. And I would love to have a discussion with you about update with Chris Walters about the SOS work and your work and how we can make sure that we're in sync on that. So I have, there were a couple other things. Oh, the training course, I think we've got we've usually offered that. I just want folks to know that we've usually offered that course through DOI Talent, which is the Department of Interior course. And we're going to have to figure that out because my contact has left the BLM at our training center. And so I just want to make sure that before we get too far into it, that we've got somebody over there that is going to be taking the lead so that we can get it offered to people through DOI Talent. Okay.
Sounds good. I'll let Shannon know that that needs to be on her radar, that we need to have a way that it's within your structure to take the course.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And then the other question I have for you, and this is great work that you guys are doing out there. I got a little nervous about information and how far we're sharing information about the rare plant populations, mostly because we've got a vast amount of land and we don't have enough legal law enforcement out there. And, you know, there have been just incredibly, there's a lot of poaching going on right now in the succulent world, in the cactus world. And so I just want to make sure that we're not somehow getting that information out. So there is the threat of collection.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that's my number one concern most of the time when we give anybody access to our database are the lat longs of the plant populations. And so currently the list of people who has access to the CaPR database is extremely small. And the data we're using is it's basically just the members of the network. And we're hoping as we move it to the CPC website to make it even more secure, have like member level authentication. And so something that we're still deciding as a group, we have had requests from people in the Forest Service or BLM botanists to potentially access some of this information. And so we just want it to be on very like person by person basis, and not like, oh, everyone in the BLM has access, or not to say like that they would do anything wrong, you know what I mean? But we're trying to be as restrictive as possible just so that we can prevent any sort of malfeasance, rare plant malfeasance.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great work. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. And thanks, Peggy, for highlighting that need to be conscientious about some of the locational information. We've got a couple other hands up. So Vince, I see you've already got your camera on. Go ahead and ask your question or share.
Yeah, hi, Katie. It's great to see you. I'm with the California Native Plant Society, and I was actually really excited to hear about this pilot outreach to Florida. And I don't know if there's anybody else on the call, or if you could go into a little more detail about that, that would be really great.
Yeah, so at Fairchild, so I think maybe there's people from Fairchild on the call, but they're one of our pilot collectors. And so Fairchild and Bach Tower Gardens and Atlanta Botanic Gardens are the main kind of regional seed banks for Florida species. And so they've really been taking the lead on collecting the rare plants in Florida. What's interesting is they have different challenges than California. There's, obviously a lot more development, a lot less public land, and I don't know, there's more recalcitrant species. There's more species that can't be stored. And so what we're trying to do is maybe hit a different balance between the number of exceptional species that we're funding and the number of orthodox species we're funding. Because Vince also serves on our exceptional species task force for CaPR. It's just a larger set of species that need that attention in Florida. And so we're working with like Valerie Pensek crew on different projects and consulting on how to store some of the species. And so it's different, but we think that a lot of the aspects of the model can be replicated there.
All right, thank you, Vince. It looks like Brad Anderson, you've got your hand up. If you're able to turn your camera on and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hello, my name is Brad Anderson. I'm an environmental manager with the Army Corps of Engineers in Sacramento District. Thanks for having me. I had a question kind of similar to Vince's there about, you mentioned you had the $3 million of funding that Gavin Newsom passed down. And I'm wondering who actually was out doing the collection for those different species. If that was all through the Center for Plant Conservation, or if you consulted it out or kind of shared it with botanical gardens and that kind of thing.
Well, so California Plant Rescue is like a network of botanic gardens. And so it's actually been pretty even between, the three largest collectors in that network in terms of who collects the seed right now are California Native Plant Society, California Botanic Garden, and UC Santa Cruz. And a lot of the reason for that is because many of the remaining species that qualify for funding here are in the northern part of the state. And so, but there's been at least 10 institutions that have received seed collection funding: San Diego Zoo, Santa Barbara Botanic Garden, UC Davis, UC Berkeley. So all of these CPC or California Plant Rescue institutions are contributing. And so we're not one seed bank, we're not one consultant, we're like a group that's like working together to collect the seeds.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Peggy, is your hand up again, or is it a remnant?
Well, it's a remnant, but I do have a question.
All right, go for it.
I'm just curious, Katie, if there is any work on getting permanent funding for this from the state of California, and if that's something.
Yeah, if there's one state that it could happen, right? But I think that we're really going to focus on that maybe at our next meeting, talking about like next steps, like the next generation of funding for this. We were so lucky to have a lot of advocacy support from California Native Plant Society in acquiring this first initial round of funding. And we're really hopeful. We think we've been successful. And so we hope that we can show our stakeholders that we've been able to make a lot of, like $3 million is an amazing amount for like seed banking funding, but I don't feel like it's that much money actually for a state budget. So hopefully we can make it happen again. And we just need to maybe refine, like we said, like what we want. Do we want like new populations? Do we want to work on how to bring the collections we have to restoration potential? Do we want both? So yeah, we're working on it, but we don't have it in hand just yet.
Well, I think with the bipartisan infrastructure law, it's bringing the attention, and it's mostly in terms of the restoration species, but the department alone has $905 million for restoration in the next 5 years. And while that is only 5-year money, I think the fact that the seed strategy made it into the infrastructure bill is a sign that people are starting to think about plants in a different way. And so I would encourage you, I guess I should say, that ride the coattails however you need to, or, you know, I'm happy to talk with you guys about some of the ways that happened. Okay.
Sounds good, Peggy. Yeah, if we would love to pick your brain on that some more, because I'm trying to work on our elevator pitch for rare plants are part of resilient ecosystems too. But I don't know if you have any good strategies for that. It would be great to know.
Well, I'm sorry I've been really busy and I haven't gotten back in touch with you guys for a while, but we really should have some more regular conversations. So happy to do it, and like to pass on anything for plant conservation.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Peggy. I mean, Peggy mentioned the 905 million that the Department of the Interior has under the bipartisan infrastructure law, but there's also our colleagues over at the Department of Agriculture, and that has additional funding under that. And so there is a real opportunity to work in unison towards the greater good of conservation of species. So great opportunities at hand. And I do think, Katie, that elevator speech and really clear bullets about, you know, the issue, the process, are timely at this point. So it's great to think about. I did have one, if somebody could please post the meeting details into the chat for the CPC meeting coming up in Denver, that would be great. I don't know, I saw that somebody posted the California Native Plant Society conference, but I haven't scrolled back far enough to see if someone posted that, and if not, if you could. I did have, oh, is it there, Vince?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. I'm looking at five different screens really, but I had one other question, because so much of the infrastructure has been built for this process in the California work. And you mentioned, you know, being able to, and as a next step, integrating the database and web tools and being able to share those. And I'm wondering what your thoughts on really like how widely they can be shared. So is that structure then available for that next effort in Florida and then that next effort in X state or region?
I think so. And I think like the way we've been thinking about it at CaPR is that this is supposed to be a replicable model for Florida, or like maybe a different avenue could be like if, say, like the BLM wanted to see all of their occurrences and seeds on a map, it could work in that context too. We would probably need the data to be obviously restricted to the people who have MOUs with these specific regional or agency entities. We really care about the data security above all else, but we also want this investment in technology to be replicable as widely as possible. So yeah, I hope that was clear. Maybe that wasn't, I don't know.
No, I think it was clear. I just want to make sure to acknowledge how important that is, because that is an amazing investment in that structure. And it's something that you can readily dismiss, you know, as less important than the on the ground work. So it's just so valuable to have that in place and have the ability to share that in the proper way.
Right. Yes. We're really excited to have that. And we're hoping it works well. It's so until it exists, you know, it's nerve-wracking. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let me scroll through. Does anyone else have a question? And again, this is a great opportunity to speak directly to Katie and ask her questions. So I don't currently see, Peggy, your hand is up. Is it a remnant or do you have another question?
I always have a question. I'm sorry. I'm recalcitrant at taking my hand down. Sorry. I do want to know, for the California species that are going into ARS up in Fort Collins, are they going in as black boxed, or are they going in as the typical ARS where it gets delivered to various curators through their system of experts? Like, do the alliums go to the allium curator?
It depends on, we're not, so for California, CPC doesn't mandate research storage. So the way I think about it is there's maybe three kinds. There's black box storage, research storage, and then there's the curator storage. But the individual seed banks have their individual agreements most of the time. Like, for instance, our largest collection in the network is California Botanic Garden, and they do black box storage. San Diego Zoo does research storage. So there's some institutions submitting their materials under the CPC transfer agreement, and there's some that are just submitting to black box under their own specific agreement. We like to recommend, well, we just want the seeds backed up, number 1, number 2, and number 3. But number 4, we like maybe potentially to have them stored as research storage, because maybe it acknowledges the potential for these seeds to be learned from by different studies. So that's just what I personally advocate, but I understand that it's very rare, and people sometimes, especially different landowners, have different priorities for that. So number 1 thing is just to have it backed up.
Yeah, thanks. All right, I'm putting my hand down.
Okay, does anyone else have a question? Okay, I think I've scrolled through the list. I don't. Oh, go ahead,
I can
Vince.
always ask.
All right, go for it.
So what I'm sensing is that you're seeing this as perhaps a national rollout at some point with significant federal funding. It seems like that would be the target. I know that we have within the United States, almost every state has a native plant society that could work in an integrated fashion with, scientists in each of those states. So could this become a bigger deal than it currently is? In other words, bigger than the state by state model, do you think?
I think so. I would love that. The issue, sometimes working across state lines in this context, like, there is some value to it being on a state by state basis, because at the national level, I can speak for CPC, states don't always agree on taxonomy, or usually within the state, people have an agreed upon sense of what's listed, or they use the same ranking system. Like in California, we use CMPS, right? And then in Florida, they really they actually have a few different ones. There's a set for South Florida, there's their heritage ranking system. And so I do really love the idea of there being a national, America plant rescue. But I think for it functionally, it does work for it to be in state or regional units. There are some units that would have to be, just because of the biodiversity of the region, probably larger. The Midwest has relatively fewer by the numbers rare plant species, but many populations and many threatened populations. So maybe we work better as a multi-state there. But yeah, we've thought a lot about that. And another region we're really interested in that's underrepresented, we think ex-situ is Nevada, Idaho, Utah, that area. And so we have another kind of mini network. We have ongoing funding with the Forest Service, Region 3 in Arizona and New Mexico. And so I didn't mention that, but Catherine Kennedy has been really supportive of seed banking programs there.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, thank you again, Katie, for an excellent presentation. And as a reminder, this was recorded. And so if you think you know friends and colleagues who would benefit from listening in to this great talk, please feel free to share that link with them and encourage them to watch this. So thank you for your time. Very much appreciated.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yay.
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are a little bit ahead of schedule, so you may gain some time back in your day, but we do have plenty of time for roundtable. So this is an opportunity for folks to share so that we can learn from each other, be in the know on what's up and coming as far as meetings and conferences, presentations. So I will look for hands up. Please also feel free to just turn your camera on and introduce yourself if you want to share. So, oh, Gary, it looks like you turned your camera on and you've introduced yourself. So go ahead and share your update.
Yeah, so the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History each year holds their annual Smithsonian Botanical Symposium. So we have a new Smithsonian Botanical Symposium coming up on May 13th of this year. I posted it in the PCA listserv, but if that email landed in your spam box or if you missed it or overlooked it, here it is again. I'm going to put the link in the chat. The theme this year is Life on the Edge, Exceptional Plants in Exceptional Places. We're going to have a lineup of 5 different speakers and a roundtable discussion. It's co-hosted between the Natural History Museum and the U.S. Botanic Garden. And Susan Pill from the Botanic Garden will be hosting the roundtable with the 5 speakers. The 5 speakers will be talking again about exceptional plants in exceptional places. So that includes plants growing on cliffs or growing in the desert or growing high alpine, or in the fynbos of South Africa. We'll have a wide variety of speakers, so feel free to register. As of now, it's a virtual symposium. If COVID restrictions are lifted at the Natural History Museum, we hope to make this into a hybrid event in which people can attend in person in the auditorium at the Natural History Museum and still participate from your homes or offices all around the world. And what else am I missing? And it's free, so feel free to sign up and we hope to see you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Exceptional and free. That's a win-win. I love it. Okay, Mandy, it looks like you've got your hand up.
Yes, hello everyone. I just wanted to announce that Peggy is going to be giving a talk as part of the Department of the Interior Office of Policy Analysis seminar series. I did put the announcement through the PCA listserv, but I will put just a quick little, the title and link and all that in the chat. It is going to be on the National Seed Strategy, both progress made as well as a vision for the future. So that'll be Monday, March 14th, so this coming Monday from 12:15 to 1:15 Eastern. And again, I'll put that information in the chat. But hope you all can make it. Oh, and it's publicly available. So, and they have a very, very large audience capacity, so feel free to share widely.
All right, excellent. We're looking forward to that update from Peggy.
And it's free, guys.
Free and exceptional.
It too is free.
Okay, others, what do you have to share about either the work you're doing or meetings or events that you want to make sure everyone is aware of?
Okay, this is Peggy again. Is Katie still on with us?
Yes.
Because I did think of another question for you, Katie. Do you guys still have the endowment of rare plants in the CPC collection?
Like the sponsorship program?
Yeah, the sponsorship.
Yep.
Yeah, we used to
Yep.
call- okay.
Actually, I think that we're, I know that we are actually trying to revitalize that and push that more. So yes.
Okay. This might be a really good time to do that.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah.
talk.
We will think on that and jump on that for sure. So awesome. Yeah, we could do that.
Okay, Vince, I turned your camera on. Did you, or I see that you turned your camera on. Do you have something else to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that we have this big conference. We expect over 1,000 attendees throughout the state, maybe throughout the world. in San Jose, the California Native Plant Conference, California Native Plant Society Conference. It'll be the 20th to 22nd. There'll be workshops and field trips and just a great time to be had by all. We have a poetry reading, slam, we have a tattoo contest, live music festival. Yeah, we go crazy for native plants in California. So if you want to come, you're more than welcome. I sent the link earlier.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I would love to be part of a native plant poetry slam. Love it. Okay, I see another hand up. Mandy, is that you with your hand back up, or is there someone else?
Nope, sorry, that was just a leftover. It's down now. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay, other sharing. This is a great opportunity just to share either what you're working on or an upcoming meeting or event. And definitely go back through the chat. There are lots of great links to events. There's links to the PCA page, Plant Conservation Alliance page. So look back through that. I'm going to do one more scan and allow just a few seconds for people to think about whether there's something they'd like to share. Okay, well, I guess just a reminder that the next general meeting of the Plant Conservation Alliance is May 11th. And as Gary mentioned, the topic and the title for the presentation for that meeting is the Sky Islands of the Desert Southwest. So that should be an excellent presentation. If you aren't already on the PCA discussion list, please feel free to join those. And I will, unless there's anything else, Maggie, is there anything I'm forgetting to do that Patricia would normally do? I should ask.
Sorry, nope, I think we got everything.
Okay.
I'm pasting in the discussion list page link.
Okay, excellent. So that will be in the chat. And again, the meeting pages have, there's lots of great information in there. Definitely check your spam and junk folders if you feel like you've joined the list and you're not getting messages. They may end up there until you acknowledge that you want to see them on a regular basis. So with that, I will close this session of the PCA general meeting for the month of March, the year 2022. And again, thank you to Dr. Katie Heinemann for that great presentation. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. Thank you for everything you do to both value and support native plant conservation, and have a great rest of your Wednesday afternoon. And take care, everybody.
And thanks, Lori, for leading us through this.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. There's a great structure in place. It was easy to follow. Thanks, everybody.